the goalless plans, but you never know what the Eibishter has in mind. But I would imagine that at 7:30 tomorrow morning, if we're being raised Mashiach, we're going to be doing something else. I don't know what, but we're going to be doing something else. Maybe recovering from a really, or maybe in the middle of an amazing Farbrengen. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. The last thing we saw, which was Thursday, the Rebbe began to teach us very, very clearly that the revelation of the king in the field is not simply a Mesilas Koach, it's his utterance. It's an arousal from above. And what it is aroused, it arouses in us our real, who is the true Ani. Who is the true Ani? Someone with an essential connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That essential connection, therefore, drives us to Doidi. So once there's a revelation of the real Ani, so then Mamela, consequently, ledodi. That's just a natural thing to do. That's what I want, the true I. There might be an I that is interested in other things also, but the true I is someone who wants Doidi. And that's revealed in Elul. And that the Rebbe explained it to us as an Indian in the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamin, that the first Midah is Kel, and Kel is a level of Ein Sof Baruch Hu, a level of infinite godly light, which is the governor and the minister that ultimately is rules over you and I. It's the most powerful force in you and I in any revealed way, and that's why our name is Yud Sar Kel, right? Yisrael. That we're our Sar, our minister, that which drives us truly is Kel, that level of godliness. In other words, we have an intrinsic connection to the Yud Gimel Yisrachim. Now, really, we'll see that we talked about earlier that we have a level of connection to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu that transcends the Yud Gimel Yisrachim, and that's the essential connection of the essence of our soul to the essence of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll see how that all works out. Okay, so that took us up to Oz Zion. And that means we've at this point in the Maimer, we have explained Ani ledodi. We do not understand why it's before Doidi Li. Because now Ani ledodi is a response to Doidi Li. Doidi Li is this incredible revelation of the Yud Gimel Yisrachim, which arouses in us an appreciation of who we really are. That is what spurs us to go to Doidi. So it certainly seems like an arousal from above. Okay, and the Rebbe said it is. Right, the very fact. Now, in terms of the mashal, the Rebbe said the very fact that the king is in the field, that everybody wants to go see the king. Why? Well, he's their king. Not just because it's a traffic accident. There's that also, right? But this is much deeper than that. Since it's my king, I want to go see. Right? Okay. I heard an interesting story on Shabbos with the Farbrengen, and it's worth sharing because it has a Musar Haskell for us. I'll tell it quickly. Rav Tuvia Weiss. Rav Tuvia Weiss was the head of the Eidach Haredis in this country. Right? The Rav of the Eidach Haredis, he was called the Gaivid. And he passed away. So when he was a young boy, of course, he grew up in Europe and things started happening in Europe. His parents arranged that he could be part of the kinder transport. The King of England arranged that 1,000 children would be taken out of Europe and brought to England and saved. He got his. It was, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was the King of England who was the initiator of this, King George, and this is Elizabeth's father, right? He Hashgacha Pratis that he was king because who was Edward? His brother, I think, right? Who abdicated? Who was Edward? I think it was his brother. So his brother was a Nazi. His brother was a Nazi sympathizer who became king, but then abdicated because he married a commoner who was American. So she saved us, right? Because he married to say he couldn't be king. So he left in case his brother became king. So Edward was a Nazi sympathizer. So Baruch Hashem, he was not king of England when the war broke out, because as much as the Americans were definitely the driving force for the victory, the only reason there was anything to even fight for was because of what the Brits were doing in those first couple of years. So we have to give them credit where credit is due. So King George arranged that 1,000 Jewish children, they basically, they got money, the Germans, to run the war effort. So it's a crazy thing that the Brits gave them money to fight them. But anyway, but to save these kids, so the British government gave them money, and they sent 1,000 Jewish kids. He was one of those kids. Rabbi Silberg's mother was one of those kids. Talked to Rabbi Silberg about it at some point. His mother was one of the children in the kinder transport. That's what she was saved, and that's why there's a Rabbi Silberg, and he has Baruch Hashem a whole house full of kids, and there's a bunch of grandkids because that one woman. So he made it to England. At one point, I'm not sure exactly when this happened. Right? It doesn't sound like it was the end of the war because of the story, but that's the person who told the story said it was at the end of the war. But that didn't make sense. You'll hear why I find that hard to understand based on the story. At one point, the King of England came to see the kinder in the train. King George wanted to see the Jewish children he had saved. Now, they were put somewhere in the Midlands. They were in some town in the Midlands, so north of London. So he came on a train. Tuvia Weiss was a little boy, 10, 11, 12, whatever. He decided he was going to ask the king to help him. The king is going to be coming. He's going to be able to get to the king, hopefully. And he's going to ask the king. The king is all-powerful. He saved us, so maybe he can save my parents. Maybe get my parents out of Europe. He's going to ask him to save his parents. So the train started coming, and he was waiting there, and he was going to jump up, to where obviously the king's looking out a window. He's going to jump up to the window and ask the king if he can talk to him. Before the train got to him, he noticed it stopped. What had happened? A young boy had put himself on the tracks, laid down on the tracks in front of the train, made the train stop. The train stopped. King George said, that young boy must want to talk to me if he did something like that. He stopped the train so he could talk to me, bring him to me. And that young boy asked King George if he could save his parents. So Tuvia Weiss realized that his plan was over because this guy had already beaten him to the plan. So he said, okay. And sure enough, a week later, that young man's parents came to where they were, managed to save them. That's why I don't think it could be the end of the war. This is the end of the war. So either everybody's gone, God forbid, or they're going to somehow meet up. I don't know, but I'm not sure. This doesn't matter. That's not the important part of the story. That child's parents came a week later. King George arranged that. So Tuvia Weiss realized the person who told the story in the name of someone else said what the other, he heard this at Sheva Brachos. That's how stories work, right? He heard this story at Sheva Brachos from someone named Kuti Meidafnik. He's a very special guy. So Kuti added to the story. So what's the Musar Haskell of the story? The king is in the field. King George was in the field. Right? He couldn't go to King George in the palace. He couldn't go to London and knock on the door. But King George came to where he is. King George came, the king, Abish, came to the field, to where they were. And that's not enough. You have to figure out how to get to the king when he's in the field. And that's the little boy who had the plan. And that's us in Ellen. It's one thing the king is in the field. It's an amazing story relative to what we're learning. The king is in the field. The king is on a train to come visit us, but we have to figure out, okay, so how do I go get the king? How do I go to see the king? I have to figure that out in my own life. And every single one of us has a slightly different way of going to see the king. Generally the Rebbe said it's Kabbalah soul. That's true. Except the king is king. Okay, so what does that mean in my life? Every one of us, there's a general acceptance of the king, but there's also a very personal and specific acceptance of the king in my own life. So we have to figure out how to put ourselves down on the tracks and stop the train so we can talk to the king. Amazing story. These kids, they both had the same idea. How many other kids have the same idea? I want to save my parents. Then, of course, the parents had there's more to the story. The parents had a little bit of bread, so they gave him all the bread. Tuvia Weiss. They said to him, you're going to live, so this bread is useful for you. We have no idea whether we're going to live, and there's 2 days of bread here. What's going to happen day 3? I don't know. There's enough bread here for you for quite a few days, and by that time you should be okay. So they gave him all the bread they had. He sent that little boy away. Baruch Hashem. He made it in the head of the Charedas here in Yerushalayim. That's a very powerful, I don't mean politically powerful position in Torah. It's just like amazing thing. It was big time. Okay. We finished on the ledodi. Now the Rebbe is going to explain doidi li, what that's all about. V'yesh lo, the al yedei, the hagilu, I'm sorry, al yedei shehagilu, the yud gimel sarachim, ma'order, u'megala, it arouses and reveals harotzon apnimi d'Yisrael, the true desire of every Jew. Very Zion, beginning of very Zion, page Shin Samach Zion. Showed rotzon d'Yisrael be'elokus, that the true desire of every Jew showed rotzon d'Yisrael be'elokus hu, right? The true rotzon of a Jew is in elokus. What does he want? He wants the Eibishter. Why? Lefi shem mushroshim ba'atzmus, because the Jew is sourced in the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We spent quite some time explaining the different levels of reality. Etzem or Kli. That's all there is. Everything that is fits in one of those places. Etzem, that's the Eibishter Mamish. Or infinite godly revelation. Infinite godly energy. Kli, godly. Well, there are created Kalim also. But Kalim start off as godly. 10 spheres are Kalim. Right? The ability for God to, that which allows God to reveal himself in the finite. But who are we? We're mushrosh ba'atzmus. Nasa ilui, so therefore that brings about an ilui, an elevation in the Yud Gimel Mir Sarachimim themselves. In other words, you and I, by virtue of doing tshuva, can elevate that level of godliness that is revealed in Elul. We don't just elevate ourselves, we elevate an aspect of the Eibishter himself. Oh, how does that work? Well, let's see. Va'inyan hu, the matter is a zoy. The fact that Chazal say, based on the pasuk Bereshis bara Elokim, and Rashi in the very beginning, the first pasuk in the Torah, Rashi explains Bereshis, base Reshis, two firsts. For the sake of two firsts, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. What are the firsts? Torah v'Yisrael. Right? And then it brings psukim to show that Am Yisrael is a Reshis and the Torah is a Reshis. Base Reshis. Because of two Reshises. Right? So the whole world was created for the sake of Yisrael. HaKavana b'zehi. What does that mean? That does not simply mean the physical world. That the physical world was created for our sake. That means every aspect of reality outside of the essence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu exists for our sake. Because all of those levels of reality, the highest levels of godly light, the highest levels of infinite godly light, the level of godly light before even the first tzimtzum, so it's a level of godly light that couldn't possibly be the source of worlds. All of that reality only exists because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to. It has no absolute existence, no necessary existence. There's only one thing that exists necessarily, we've talked about this, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. That's called Etzem. Atzmus, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God. No name. I mean, I have to give a name. The Eibishter. Right? What does that mean? So an exercise that you might go through now and then to realize what it means, that what your emunah about. Your emunah isn't about the fact that God created the world. You shouldn't have emunah about the fact that God created the world. You should know exactly how God created the world. It's not emunah, it's das, it's intellect. You can explain it. Same way you don't have emunah how your car runs. Now most of us do because we don't know how it runs. We say good, but we don't have to have emunah about how a car runs. We can learn how a car runs. Okay, so we can learn to sit this and figure out how Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world. You can't prove it in a laboratory, but that doesn't mean you don't know it. I would assume every single one of you don't believe in love. You know there's something called love. You can't prove it in a laboratory. Love's not an idea. It's an emotion. You can't prove emotions, but you can make reasonable assumptions that this is what you and I will call love, but someone who doesn't believe in love and you show him, oh look, see what happened to this person? We hooked him up to a bunch of machines and someone that he loves walked in the room, and so there was some sort of reaction to biological and chemical and whatever's going on in him. There's a reaction to the fact that someone that he loves walks in the room. That's fine. You and I will call that love. The guy who doesn't believe in love will say, hey, kind of love. It's a chemical reaction. There's nothing to do with love. It's just whatever. It's silly. You're so unsophisticated. You're so silly. Right, okay. because he doesn't believe in love. You do. But you don't believe in it. You know there's something called love. Right? But it's not something I can prove intellectually because it's not an idea. It's an emotion. Okay? So to God. I can't prove God in a laboratory. But I can know that he created the world. What does that mean? I can explain to you exactly how it happened. And I don't mean I mean you should be able to explain exactly how it happened. You can't yet? Okay, sit down and learn enough Chassidus to be able to explain exactly how it is that God created the world. For whatever reason, he had a taiva for dir b'tachtonim. We don't understand why, okay? And that produced a desire for all sorts of different levels of infinite godly light, which ultimately resulted in the creation of a physical world. And in that physical world, there are people called Yidden, there are people who aren't Yidden, and there's all sorts of interesting animals and birds and flowers and all sorts of amazing stuff. And why you put all that stuff in the world, who knows? There's animals at the bottom of the sea that no one's ever going to see, but they're down there, and who knows what they're doing down there. And he created all that for a purpose that ultimately he will be revealed down here, and that revelation is based on you and I bringing about that revelation by virtue of our Vedas Hashem. Okay, that's what he wanted. Why? Kacha. He just did. Okay, and everything that happens outside of the essence of God is the level of a Kadosh Baruch Hu that just is. Didn't come from anywhere, has no purpose, didn't start. Godly light, we say, ain't safe. It has no end. It has a beginning. There's a point at which that's not the point in time, because there's no time, but there's a point at which that level of reality comes into existence when God decides that there should be something called infinite revelation, called light. It's all part of the process of creating this world. Okay? Right? But so to speak, before that, what was there? God. What does that mean? What was he doing? It's his purpose. Doesn't have it. Where did he come from? He didn't. When did he start? He didn't. It's just there. Well, why is he there? No reason. It just is. Where did he come from? He didn't. Well, who put him there? No one put him there. Well, everything has something that put him there. Yes, everything but him. Oh. Well, what's his purpose? Doesn't have one. What does he do? Nothing. That's why that level of God, we say, leis machshavat tfisa beichol, no thought can comprehend that. The only part of you that can connect to that part of the Eibishter is called your emunah. Why can your emunah connect to that part of the Eibishter? Because that's where you come from. It's where your neshama comes from. Your neshama is sourced in that place. The Jewish soul is sourced in that place, and that's called mushrash b'etzem. The soul is sourced in the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what we call true being. Yesh Amiti. And what does Yesh Amiti mean? It exists by virtue of itself. It doesn't require anything else for its existence. Because if I require something else for my existence, then I don't exist. It does. Right? Sunlight doesn't have existence. The sun exists. So there's something called sunlight. Sunlight doesn't have absolute existence. It exists by virtue of the fact that it has a source called the sun. And if there were no sun, there'd be no light. So what exists? Sun. The sun exists. That's what's really there. Okay, but the sun also doesn't have essential existence because the Abishah created the sun. At the end of all of that trail, where do you get to? Something called Atzmus, the essence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Where do we come from? There. Oh, okay. What's the purpose of Atzmus deciding, for whatever reason, that it wants to create a world? And that means it wants all of those levels of godliness in between Atzmus and us. All those levels exist for the purpose of creating you. You're the Yid, Yisrael. Zeh Shabriya B'Shvi Yisrael, Kavana B'Zehi, and the Rebbe says this in a number of different places. We learned it in Zertzchukas most recently. Lo Yirak L'Briya Sa'ilam, not only to the creation of the physical world, or the four worlds, all levels of revelation, in other words, all levels of godly light, even the highest levels of Gilui, the most powerful levels of infinite godly light only exist in order to ultimately end up in a world where there's going to be a bunch of people, and there's going to be a group of people, and they're called the Yidden, and they're going to accept the Torah, and they're going to have the most obvious influence on making the world a dir b'tachtonim. Every single person has a place in that project, but the people who are most obviously involved in it are called the Jews. Just like every Jew has a connection to the base of Mikdash, but the people who are most obviously connected are called Kohanim. That's why you and I are called the Mamlechas Kohanim. We're the Kohanim of the world. There's Kohanim of us, and they take care of the base of Mikdash, and there's Kohanim of the world. It's the Yidden. Right? You feel insignificant and inferior because you're not a Kohen? No. You have what to do. Kohen has more. There's all sorts of laws that apply to the Kohen that don't apply to you. Right? People who the Kohen can marry that you can't. Things the Kohen can do that you can't. States of Tumah that the Kohen can't be in, but you don't look for it, but you can be in that state of Tumah. I mean, you're allowed to go to a cemetery. Kohen can't. Why not? They have a special job. Okay, so we have a special job. Shal Yedei Yerida. Now the Rebbe says something really close. Al Yedei Yerida the Yud Gimel Amid Sarach. By virtue of the descent of the Yud Gimel Amid Sarach, Nimkeimam, from their place. In other words, a very lofty place in godly reality. What's that in the mashal? Heichal Malchus. The king comes out of his palace. Malchus. Right? L'mayla mishtalshlis, beyond the four worlds, even beyond Elam Atzilus. So the Yud Gimel Yisrachim descend down into this world and revealed in this world in Elul. Before we go any further, why? We know why. Why is there a revelation of Yud Gimel Yisrachim in the world? You know why. We've learned about it. What are they supposed to do, so to speak? They're supposed to do tshuva?
We do.
Oh, we do tshuva. So help us do tshuva, right? Arouse in us the desire to do tshuva. That's what they're there for. Right? When Moshe Rabbeinu was taught the Yud Gimel Yisrachim and the crack in the rock after the Chet HaEgel, right? After the sin of the golden calf, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu was taught the secret of tshuva. And what's the secret of tshuva? Hashem, Kol Rachum B'Cham. That's what he's taught. Okay. So where do they come from, so to speak? A very lofty, transcendent place where you and I usually can't access that. Where do they come? L'soda. Into the field. Meaning down here, or the Mazir, where you and I are. Why? In order to arouse u'legalos and to reveal harotzon hapanimi b'Yisrael, the true desire of a Jew. That's what we've learned in the Maimer, right? The king comes into the field. The Jew is in the midbar or in some part of the field that he can't see the king, but he knows the king is in the field. He wants to go see the king. He can't quite get it together to go see the king, but his desire to see the king arouses in the king a certain level of pleasure called mekabelis anvasev upon him yafes, that he receives them graciously. What does he receive? Their ratzon, their desire. They haven't come see him yet. Right? That triggers in the king his essential love and connection to the Jewish people, which triggers in the Jewish people their essential connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when they go see the king in the field. That's the story that the Rebbe told us in the first 6 chapters. That's how it works in Elul. Oh. So why does the king come to the field? To arouse in us the desire to go see the king, because our etzem, our essence is the king. Okay. But this isn't the king, so to speak. It's a certain aspect of the king. It's a certain revelation of the king, a really powerful revelation of the king. But it's not the king in his palace. So it's all about arousing our desire to go see the king. Mizgala behem, therefore it's revealed in them, the Yud Gimel Amid Sarachim. Shakavona behem, their intention. Why is there such a level of godly reality called the Yud Gimel Amid Sarachim? Why did the Eibishter allow himself to be revealed in that way, that form? Why? What's that all about? You just said it. Why is there such a level of godliness called the Yud Gimel Amid Sarachim? For us to do tshuva. Oh, so what's the purpose of that level of godliness? For you and I to do tshuva. Oh, okay. Mizgala behem shekavana behem. The intention of that level of godly revelation, he bishvil Yisrael, is for the sake of the Jew, Sheshorshim, that their source, Hubatzmus, their source is in a level higher than the Yud Gim Yisrachim. But the Yud Gim Yisrachim is that aspect of real godliness that will affect us and cause us to connect to what we're really all about. To hopefully be in tune with the true Ani, who Ani really is. And if that true Ani is revealed, then Mamela, the deity, that's because that's what the true Ani is. Wow. Okay. So, in general, the Rebbe's going to explain this more fully, but we already see something interesting happening. If something fulfills its purpose, it's elevated by virtue of fulfilling its purpose. Right? I mean, that's what elevation is. You fulfilled your purpose. So you and I, as the Rebbe is starting to explain, is going to explain more fully, can elevate the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim by virtue of us using that energy to serve God more fully, but really more deeply, by using that revelation to help us come into contact with who we really are. Who are we? Someone Mushosh Batzos. Right? Famous statement of the Tzemach Tzedek that's been quoted many times, but has to be quoted and quoted and quoted. You should probably say it right after Maidani, but you're not allowed to learn, so you can't. Say brachas first. It's a story that a philosopher asked the Tzemach. It seems to me they had some relationship. So the philosopher asked the Tzemach Tzedek, like he was always trying to, figure out a new way to show he's right. So he said to the Tzemach Tzedek, I can prove to you that your God's not all powerful. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, okay. I don't think he said what now, but I always get that feeling from the story, like what now? What did you dream up last night? So he said, no. So he said, there's something God can't do. So he said, can't make another God. That's a good one. I don't know what I would say to that one, right? That's very good. Can God create a rock that he can't pick up? That's stupid. I know that you probably heard about it in college, it's so deep, and a guy named Anselm came up with a tautology, and everybody thinks about it, and it's amazing. There's a very simple answer to that so-called problem. Yes, he can create the rock, and yes, he can pick it up. Deal with it. God's not limited by the boxes we are, so he could create a rock he can't pick up and then pick it up. It's just the way he is. Okay, so that's not a question. Right? God can create an aron that has to be exactly 2.5 ames by 1.5 ames by 1.5 ames in space. If it's not that, it's not the aron, but it doesn't take up space. How does it not take up space? If you measure from the wall to the middle in the base of Mikdash it was 20 ames, so the Mishkan it was 10 ames. If you measure from the wall to the middle of the Mishkan, it'll obviously be 5 ames to each side. Right? Half of the area, okay. If you measure from the wall to the Aron, even though the Aron's standing there, it'll be 5 ames. Right, but it's taking up space. No. It's in space. It's not taking up space. How does that work? It's God. That's how God works. Get used to it. Right? And he did that in order so you and I should have an appreciation of what it means that he's nimna'ot, the paradox of paradoxes, and doesn't fit into the little boxes that we'd like him to fit into, that we, so to speak, fit into. So the iron ain't a mina. It's a Mishnah, obvious. It's not part of the measure. Now, when is it not part of the measure? When it's exactly 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 in space, it doesn't take up space. But if you were to make an iron 2 by 1 by 1, it would take up space. It has to be exactly the right measurements in space, not to take up space. Then it's an iron. Wow. Okay. Welcome to the world of God, which is a very, very amazing place. Okay. So that's what he asked the Tzemach Tzedek. What did Tzemach Tzedek answer him? He did. It's called the Jew. He made another God. It's called the Jew. What's a Jew? A little piece of God walking around in a body. A little piece of the image walking around in a body in Elam. bow down to the Jew. Don't bow down to the Jew. It's a silly thing to do. Right? But what is a yid be'etzim? A little piece of the Eibishter. That's who we are. Wow. Okay. The Tzemach Tzedek said to him, and I don't think he was dead. You ever see a picture of the Tzemach Tzedek? I don't think it was a joke. Just don't get that feeling. Okay. So what's the ultimate kavanah? The ultimate kavanah of the revelation of Yud Gimel Tzedakah is to arouse in you and I a connection to the essence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And by virtue of that, we can certainly appreciate the fact that the Yud Gimel Tzedakah, just by virtue of fulfilling their purpose, are elevated. Okay, but it's going to be deeper than that. We can connect this to a famous pasuk that's hard to understand, but there's different levels that it's explained in. Because the Rebbe is going to explain it here one way. But there's also the pshat, which we'll talk about, right? Melech l'sada neva. The king to the field is worked. Means the king is subservient on a certain level to the field. Now, meaning this is a pasuk. This is a pasuk from Koheles that Shlomo Melech wrote long before the Alter Rebbe's mashal of the Melech Sada, right? Okay, so the Melech has a certain bittul to the Sada. So simply, what would the Melech's subservience to the field be on the simplest level? That's where he has to eat lunch just like you and I. And where's the lunch come from? The Sada. He's the Melech. But he still has some bittul to the Sada. If there's no Sada, the king is going to be in bad shape. There were poor kings in history, right? Okay. You know, we never think of a country as poor. Meaning, you know, like the, what do I mean? The government has money, theoretically, to do, they might not have money to do everything that has to be done. I understand that. But I mean, generally, theoretically, they should be able to get it together and, you know, do certain things. So every now and then you go somewhere and you realize, wait a minute, you're in a poor country. That doesn't mean just that the people are poor. That means that the government is also poor. That means that when you're walking around, and this happened to me once, when you're in the airport in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, the airline is a great airline, really is. Fantastic airline. It's the airline that a lot of people fly to and from South Africa on, just because it's on the way, and it's just a great airline. It's a terrific airline. It's in the Star Alliance group also, so for me it's even better, right? But it's a great airline. It's fine. It's really a good airline. So you're in the airport, and you know, an airport, usually airports are, you know, pretty nice places, fancy places. I mean, not every airport is Toronto, right? Usually it's a nice place. So I remember there were buckets on the ground because there were holes in the roof and it was raining, and there were buckets catching the water. So that's what I keep explaining. This is a poor country. The government doesn't have the resources to build a better airport. The airport clearly used to be some huge hangar sort of thing. If you look at the ceiling, it's obvious. This was not a fancy building built just to be an airport. It's like this huge open space. It's really funny because, you know, airports have those places for cigarette smokers. Right? So go die on the secondary smoke that they're getting from the guy next to them. So they must have fixed this. But first time I was in Ethiopia, so I walked past it and I see all this smoke. They just made a glass thing, and you open the door and you start smoking, but there's no roof, so the smoke goes out the roof into where everybody else is. Come on, what's this about? But anyway, because you can smell the smoke. I was walking past the place, like, what's going on? Then I realized you could see the smoke rising through the open roof. The country doesn't have any money. They can't afford to build a better airport. Just like when you fly in there and you look at the roads, most of them are dirt. There's the odd paved one, but most of them are dirt roads. I mean, there's cars, old ones. There's cars, but so you go, interesting. So there were kings that didn't have money. Where's the king get? Where's the king fed from the field? Oh, so now that's obviously going to mean something in Pneumius. In our case, who's the king? Don't say a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Who's the king? Yes, it's Kadosh Baruch Hu, but we know much more than that now. What does the king represent? What's in the field? Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim are somehow sustained by the field, meaning they're going to be elevated by virtue of the fact that they come to the field. Why are they coming to the field? Why is that level of godly light being revealed in the field? To elevate you and I, to allow us to do tshuva. Oh, so that's going to give the king, Yisrachim is the king in this minor, right? That's going to be in the Soda, and that's going to be the sustenance of the king. It's going to elevate the king. Just like the wheat in the field elevates the king, he can't live without it, so to speak. Oh, wow. Melech l'Soda never. Shafilu a melech. Even the melech, she'ein l'mayla mimenu. There's no one higher than the king in the country. Nevad l'Soda. He's bottled to the field. He needs what they grow in the field, just like everybody else. Ki mimenu mechiyoseh. From the king is from the field is his sustenance. That's the Ibn Ezra on the pasuk in Koheles. But that's simple pshat. Oh, but the Zohar explains, the Fima Shekosah b'Zohar, Man Melech, who's the Melech talked about in the pasuk by Shlomo Melech? Dom Melech Ilo, the upper king, the lofty king, the transcendent king, meaning Kadosh Baruch Hu. But in our context, the Yud Gimel Sarachim, that aspect of godly revelation, the Ischaber l'Soda, that's connected to the field. So therefore, based on that, what Yesh Leimah, the Rebbe says, Shegam Mechiyosei Kaviyochel, also the sustenance, so to speak, Shel Melech Ilo, of the lofty, transcendent king, meaning Yud Gimel Sarachim, who al Yedei Sheyored v'Nimshach l'Soda, is by virtue of the fact that he descends and is drawn down into the field. Ki al Yedei Zeh, by virtue of what happens in Elul, what's revealed. Al Yedei Zeh Mizgala, it's revealed. HaKavana by the true intention of this level of godly reality. Why is there such a level of godly reality? Hu bishvil Yisrael, Sheshurshim Batzmas. It's in order to arouse in us a desire to do tshuva. Wow. Well, so the Yud Gimel Yisrachim are elevated. Ultimately, we're going to see where they elevated to, so to speak, back up to their source in Atzmos, their source in Yitzim. Who brings about that revelation? You and I. So to speak, who can take the king back to the palace? You and I. But only if we go see the king in the field. Right? That's what the mashal is. When we go see the king in the field, we go back to the palace. So to speak, we help the king go back to the palace, because the king is in the field in order to arouse in us a desire to be connected to the king in the palace. Based on what's written in the Zohar, Is Soda ve'Is Soda. There's two different types of fields. Soda Kedusha, there's the holy field, which is where the king is. The Soda de L'Umasa. And there's the negative, unholy Soda, the Soda of the other side. Okay. Based on that, well, the Rebbe's going to talk about that. Who's in the Soda on the other side? How does that work? Yesh Leimah, right? The Inyan Melech l'Soda Neva, the whole idea of the king going into the field, and the king is somehow elevated by the field and is affected positively by the field. Shal Yedei HaYorida V'Amshocha l'Soda, by virtue of the fact that the king comes to the field in Elul, Nasa Ilui B'Melech Ilo, there's an elevation of the lofty king. In other words, there's a certain, this is all over Chassidus, that you and I can have a positive effect on different aspects of godly reality by virtue of the fact that we're serving God down here in Olam Hazeh. We don't just elevate ourselves and elevate physical reality, we elevate spiritual reality back to its source in essential reality. That's why. Why can we do that? Because that's where we come from. We're the only thing around that came from there directly. Okay. Inyan melech l'soda nevad, shal yedei yorida v'amshocha l'soda, nasa ilu melech ilo. This brought about an elevation in the Yud Gimel Sarachim, that's the melech ilo, who be'ikr. How does that happen essentially? Al yedei shagilui the Yud Gimel Sarachim shalamayla mishtalshlus, the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, which are beyond hishtalshlus, in other words, beyond the level of light that's clothed in the four worlds, even Olam Atzilus, the home of the 10 spheres. The Bechlalis in general, who Melech Ilah, the lofty king, the king beyond, the transcendent king. Who gam Yisrael and Yimsan b'midbar is even shaykh to the Jews that are found in the midbar. This is what we said earlier. The Yud Gimel Yisrach can't be revealed in the midbar. Why not? Well, because the midbar is a place of concealment, of so to speak, non-godliness. Now we make the midbar. It's not that there's no God there giving it existence. Obviously there is, but where do these places come from? There's no place in physical reality, godly created physical reality, that's midbar. Right? No mountain is midbar, no river is midbar, right? Where does midbar come from? Human beings can create a place that seems to be devoid of godliness. They'll build a bar. They'll build a house of Avodah Zarah. God didn't do that, we did that. God doesn't create evil. He creates a being that has the possibility of doing evil. There's only one such being. It's the one that has intellect. It's called humans. So they're able to do something that's evil. What does evil mean? Against the will of God. They're the only being that can do that. A tiger can't do that. Doesn't mean that everything a tiger does is something that we think is great. If there's a little baby deer who's not so healthy, and the mother's there, and the baby deer is there, so the tiger has no compunction whatsoever of going up to the baby deer and just eating him for lunch. Okay, but that's not evil. That's just lunch. I mean, that's just that's the way tigers are. Okay, a human is the only one who could go up and shoot the mother just for fun, leave her there dead, and take the baby because I don't know, he wants to have a baby for his kid for the next week, and then he'll shoot it and throw it out. Only a human could possibly do that. No one else, no other creature would do that. Right? Now, that's not the worst thing humans do, okay, but that's still unnecessary and certainly not in any way, shape, or form holy, that behavior. Okay, so humans can do that. Okay. So the humans can create a reality called midbar that seems to be antithetical to God's existence. Only humans can do that. So we create the Sada de Lumase. We create the negative field. But what? The Abish is revealed there too. He's not revealed in the field because we've created a place that, so to speak, is pushing him away. But he's revealed in the Yid in that place. That's what we said, right? That the Yid in that place is still connected to the Abish. Shal Yadei Zeh. Now we also understand, just parenthetically, why on a certain level the Yid can create the most powerful midbar. Since he can be most powerfully involved, Rahman al-Islam, in behavior that's antithetical to God's will. Since there's more will relative to his behavior than anybody else. Just put it simply, Jews are going to do more aveiros than anybody else. Why? Well, because they have more mitzvahs. So there's going to be more aveiros. The possibility of doing the negative is greater because the possibility of doing the positive is greater. So there's just more of the opposite side. Also, good at being, best at being, or better at being good, better at being bad. Okay. So the elevation, the idea of the king being supported by the field doesn't just mean the field of Kedusha. It also means that even though there might be a negative field, in that place also, ultimately, a person can go from that place to an incredibly powerful connection to the king, and thereby elevate that place. Meaning that place ends up being that which pushed the Jew much closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not that it's good and it's better, there shouldn't be such a place. So let's see what the Rebbe says. Hu gam Yisrael and imsan b'sada. Also the Jew that's found in the Sada, Sada Lumazeh. That Jew is also affected by the Yud Yisrael. Shal Yedei Zeh, by virtue of that Jew being affected, Misgala Ratzon Apnimi Shelahem, it's revealed through the revelation of the king in the field. Yud Gimel Yisrael. It's revealed the true desire of that Jew That Jew's over there. What does he also want? He also wants Elokus. It's just more covered up. V'yotzim midbar, and they go out from the midbar. Sad v'lu mazeh. Last page. The Sad of the Kedusha. They go to the Sad of Kedusha. L'hakfil b'nei melech, to receive the king. Oh, so to put that, I'm just going to talk about it in a second, but to put that in more modern terms. The Jew who's far away from the Eibishter, there's this revelation in Elul that will bring him close, and therefore he's going to become a Baal Tshuva, which is one of the most powerful things imaginable. Why can he be a Baal Tshuva? Well, because he was stuck in the Midbar. But even the Jew in the Midbar is affected by the revelation of the king in the field, the Yod Gimel Midas Arachimim. And so that's going to be even a more powerful elevation of the Yud Gimel Midas Arachimim. The fact that they can even be found or affect the Jew in the Midbar, in the desert, the spiritual desert. They're elevated even more powerfully. Ki al yedei tshuva de Yisrael. Because by virtue of the tshuva of the Jew, shehayu tchila, and those Jews were first, but tachlis arichut, extremely distant. Mizgala oid yoseh, it's revealed even more fully. Hapnimius Yisrael, the true inner reality of a Jew, shirotzonim amiti, that their true desire, gam b'shas hachet, even when the Jew is doing an act that is contrary to God's will, the true desire of the Jew is still to be connected to the Eibishter, and that's why Aveiras confound Jews, and that's why the Jews are in a state of constant angst. Especially Jews who, for whatever reason, it's not their fault, but aren't connected to Torah mitzvahs. They're constantly trying to connect to something they're working like crazy to connect to something else, so they'll fill the void that's created by virtue of the fact they're not connected to who they really are. Why aren't they connected? No one told them about it. It's not their fault, so to speak, but they're not connected to it. So they have this unbelievable angst to be connected to something. So it'll be climate change, whatever it'll be. They have to be connected to something. They have to be connected to making the world better and do it. They just have to. Why? That's who they are. But no one told them what they really are. So they're just in a constant state of turmoil, looking for something else. The energy, the forefront of every movement there's ever been. What's it you want? The Eibishter. What can happen? Rakshi Yitzhak, we should talk to them. They're overcome by the Yitzhak. So they're stuck. They're in the midbar. But they want to get out of the midbar. The pasuk in last week's parsha. Keperish atzemach tzedek, ala pasuk. Ki besoda matzah. This is the Nara Murasa, right? The betrothed girl who has relations with someone who's not her betrothed. So if she's forced, so then she's not punished. Okay, so what's the language of the Torah? The language of the Torah is if it's in the city or if it's in the field. Well, what's the difference, the city and the field? Well, the image is in the city, she could theoretically cry out and save herself. Theoretically, the city means she's in a situation where she could save herself, and she doesn't, so then she did it willfully. The field, she's in a situation that even if she cries out, no one will hear her, so she can't save herself. Now that can happen in the middle of a city, right? It's just conceptually. So if it was under duress, so she's not punished. If it was not under duress, she is punished. That's the story we read about in last week's parsha. Okay, so what's the pneumius of all that? What does it say? Ki besodeh matzah. She's found in the field. Tzaka nara. She cries out, the young girl. Ve'ein mashiach. There's no one to save her. That's the pshat. What's that in pneumius? Shegam kishenara. Also when the young girl, who's that? The neshama. He besada de lumaz. She's in the field. What's that? Not the field where the king is. She's in the other field. Furthermore, shezeh gadam, the fact that she's in the field, this caused she'esav ish sadeh, Esav, who's Esav? The Ish Sada. Esav is the one who feels at home in the Sada. Yaakov is the Ish Tam who is in the Ahalim. He's sitting and learning Torah. Esav is the one who's in the field of Lumazeh. And Esav grabs her. Hechzik ba, v'shachavi ma, and he lays with her. She's being overcome by Esav. She cries out. Ve'ein Mashiach, but there's no one to hear her. That's the pshat. What's the pnimius? Hine, gamaz, even then, harotzen de neshama hu b'kedusha. The rotzen of the neshama is in holiness. Ve'hit sayekes, and she cries out b'mar nafshav, in the bitterness of her soul. Al zeh, she'esav ish soda, that Esav, the one of the man of the field, machzik ba, is holding on to her. The worldly reality has got her in its grips. Saka anara, she cries out. Oh, if she cries out, val yedei zeh, the pasuk says, ein Mashiach, there's no one to save her. What's the drasha, the chassidish drasha? Ayin Mashiach, a level of transcendent godliness called ayin. Yesh mi ayin, creation yesh mi ayin, the creation of something created from something that's transcendent of creation. Oh, ayin Mashiach, this place in her that's connected to the essence of HaKadosh Baruch who saves her. Shenim shachla Yeshua, that is drawn down to her salvation, mi bechinas ayin, from this level of ayin, shalamayla mishtashlos, which is beyond the natural order, beyond created worlds. Wow. The neshama is in the grips of Esav, and the neshama is crying out. If the neshama cries out loud enough, so it might very well be that she gets help from ayin, she gets help from a level of godliness, and then that neshama, for whatever reason, has the good fortune to bump into certain people and end up learning certain things, and mind you, who knows what could happen to that neshama, could even do the craziest thing imaginable, leave behind the Sada de Lumaz and end up learning Torah in a yeshiva in Yerushalayim. Whoever heard of such a thing? What a crazy thing. That's what the Rebbe is explaining how that happens. That the neshama inside is dying to be connected to the Eibishter, and sometimes it's woken up. Sometimes it cries out, and Baruch Hashem, one thing leads to another, and the person ends up extracting themselves from the midbar. Can happen. I've never met anybody who it happened to, but I've heard stories about people who left college, left work, went to yeshiva in Israel. I never met anybody like that, but I'm sure it's true. Can't be that all those people telling the stories are just making them up.
I wouldn't think so.
No, it's got to be something, right? No, what do you think? I think it's true. It's got to be true. It's got to be someone out there. No? Do me a favor. If you meet someone, let me know. Tell me about it. My roommate. My roommate. He did it. Yesterday, I got off the bus. Always get off the bus. But I got off the bus late yesterday, right? Because we didn't have facilities. And as I get off the bus, I got a WhatsApp from some young lady who I met at the retreat, the Sinai Scholars Retreat, and who I was talking to her about coming to Mayanot. She said, Rabbi Kaplan, I think I just saw you get off a bus. Which is sweet. I mean, it's not like she assumed that it was me, but I mean, if I'd seen her, I don't think I would have recognized her, right? So I said, yes, I did just get off a bus right near Machane Yehuda. Sure. She said, yes, that was you. I says, well, where are you? What are you doing? So I knew that she had gone somewhere. She was not, she had this, somehow the people in the girls' school had talked to her, but she said she was going somewhere else. She had been in the Neve Yerushalayim for a while, and now she was on her way to check out Eisha Torah. I guess she didn't like Neve, or she did like Neve, but she wanted to check out Eisha Torah. Anyway, I don't know. So I said, okay, well, how about Mayanot? What about that? So she said, maybe I'll try that too. Okay. So there's the Nara, Tzaka, right? She's crying up, she's Baruch Hashem. She's looking around. Let's finish up the paragraph and we'll finish the Maimer tomorrow morning. The cave and Shegilui Ratzon Apnimi Yisrael. Since the revelation of the inner desire of the Jew, Shemitzad Shorshim Batzmus, which comes from the fact that their source is in this level of godliness called the essence of God, beyond all revelation, beyond infinite, beyond finite, source of infinite, which is called light, source of finite, which is called kelim, vessels. Hu al yedei tshuva Yisrael. Where's that revelation come from? True. And in all fairness, it is true. It's a simple shot. People tell stories of people who were so far away and somehow something happened and it triggered something in them when they come back to Yiddishkeit. Those stories are quite amazing stories, and they do reveal to us how powerful the Jewish soul is, that even in that person, who knows where they were, once the soul is somehow touched, so who knows what's going to happen? The sky's the limit for that truth. And those stories are very powerful in terms of helping us appreciate the Pintel Yid, that little spark of Judaism that's in every single Jew. And we hear those stories and go, wow, that's amazing. I think I told you the story about the young girl who, with her Israeli flag, wrapping herself in the Israeli flag and walking through the pro-Nazi demonstration on her college campus. Right now, this is a girl who claims she's an atheist. All right, tell me about it. So what is it that caused you to wrap that flag around yourself and say Am Yisrael Chai as you walked through all these Nazis? What did that? Some girl in California, UC Davis, this place where, of course, all she's doing is learning Siddur all day long. I mean, what else do they do at UC Davis, right? And it's so funny because she'll claim she doesn't believe in God, right? Well, that was the little piece of God in you doing that, right? Okay. And there's a lot of stories that way. That's why when you're talking to another Jew, you always have to realize, yes, of course you're trying to talk to them in a way that their nefesh habahamis, meaning conscious them, can relate to what you're talking about. But you have to realize you're really trying to get through the nefesh habahamis to their nefesh halakis. You can't forget that they have an nefesh halakis. Don't clothe it all in so many garments of nefesh habahamis that there's no nefesh halakis left. So it all just has to make perfect sense in Gashmias and yes, you want it to be something that the nefesh habahamis can relate to, because you have to go through the nefesh habahamis, because you have to go through the conscious person to get to their superconscious soul. Okay, but there's a superconscious soul in there that wants Elokus, so you're trying to touch that. You're trying to convince them intellectually that there's a God. You're trying to touch their neshama. The neshama knows there's a God. You have to convince them. How do you touch the neshama? Well, as I'll say, words that come from the heart affect the heart. If you really believe it, it will affect it. And if you're just saying an idea that's intellectual, then okay. Nowhere the Chazal say that words that come from the brain enter the brain. Don't say that. Now, it is true that words that leave the brain enter the brain, right? That's what teachers and students, that's their relationship. But the idea is you want to get to the person's heart. Where does it come from? I was thinking about it a lot because I'm sorry, it's a little late. We're going to stop now. I also have to say Kaddish today, so my grandfather's yahrzeit. I asked my mother for his name. I mean, Ephraim Leib, I know, but I don't know his second name. I don't know his father's name. I'm going to try to find it in the next 20 minutes.
You have the cemetery?
Toronto.
You can find a grave a lot of times.
I don't know what cemetery it is in Toronto. I've been there. I was at the Levaya. It's 49 years ago.
Right.
But my uncle passed away years ago. I say Kaddish for him. But I asked my mother last night. I said I never met him. Her grandfather passed away when her father was 10 or 11. So she in Europe in 1898 or something. Her grandfather would be 134. He passed away at the ripe old age of 85, 49 years ago. 85 was a ripe old age 49 years ago. He walked to the schwitz. He used to take a schwitz one day a week. He'd go to the steam baths and sit there and just schwitz. It was called the schwitz. And then he'd take a shower and he'd walk home. Went to the steam baths, had a steam, laid down. Usually he'd fall asleep for half an hour afterwards. Laid down, go to sleep. That's where he would have wanted to go in the schwitz. He walked there. He was 85. He walked to the place. It was like a mile away. Great guy. What a guy. Let's finish the paragraph. Where's the greatest revelation of the Pintel Yid? You tell all the stories about Jews who were so far away and they came back. The elevation that's brought about in the Yud Gimel Midas, in that level of godly light that is revealed in the desert, Al Yedei Yeridos in the southern, sir. Al Yedei Yeridosim, by virtue of their descent from Shachosam, and they're being drawn down Lamata, below. Why are they drawn down? Why does the Yibishter allow that revelation to happen this time of year? To arouse us. No Nesinas Kayach. This is an arousal from above. We still don't know why I need ledodis first. That's what the Rebbe is going to explain in the last paragraph. Hu be'ikr is essentially the greatest elevation in the Yud Gimel Midas Arachim is essentially al yedei, by virtue of the fact shema'erim, that it arouses us elu, these she'etchilu b'tachlis arichut, that were far away, the people who the truth. Now, far away, every single one of us has certain aspects of ourselves that are far away. So bringing that part of us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ikr reason for the whole notion of Elul and the notion of the revelation of Yud Gimel Rachmin, and that also is very much an elevation of the Yud Gimel Rachmin. We'll see tomorrow then why is Ani Ledoidi before Doidi Li. It doesn't make sense. This is all revelations from above now. Okay. I think it's a family tree.
It's funny, I heard the same story on Shabbos.
Which story?
The story about the boy who
Tuvia Weiss?
Yeah, the same story.
Wow.
I think I heard it from Rose Silver actually. He was at the, he was sitting